Hello, I'm Ian Dodson and I'm His Majesty the King's Lord Lieutenant here in Staffordshire, which is the home of the National Memorial Arboretum, recognising and celebrating so many different contributions to our society. This memorial is the remarkable story of the men, women and children who worked in the United Kingdom coal mines, as depicted on a frieze of bronze plaques. The National Miners Memorial is built using Derbyshire stone. It has strata, formations, portraying a section cut through the earth. Encircling the stone, the frieze represents a coal seam in a drift mine, which is descending into the rock. The plaques attempt to portray the shared experiences of our coal miners over many hundreds of years. They represent their work, their comradeship, and the strong emotional bonds between all who worked in the coal mines. The story starts at the plaque on the top left-hand side on the front of the memorial.
My name is Alex Smith. I was a miner for 22 years, working at Lea Hall and Kellanley Collieries and Wakefield Mines Rescue Station. The coal mining industry is gone, but it's important to remember and memorialise the contribution coal miners and their families made to Great Britain in times of peace and war. The first 5 plaques depict how families, including very young children, worked together in horrendous conditions in coal mines up to 1842, when an Act of Parliament forbade women, girls and boys under 10 working underground. The first depicts a Victorian boy who is just leaving the mine after a long shift. Although only being about 13 or 14 years of age, he has probably been working in the mine for about 8 years. Underfed and in ill-fitting clothes, he wouldn't have seen daylight for much of the year. A mother and daughter are shown in Plaque 2, going to work at a coal mine around the time of the Royal Commission, which led to the Act of 1842. We must never forget that women have always played a pivotal role in working class mining communities. Families who worked together in the pits formed strong communities as they looked after each other. Plaque 3, Father and Son, reminds us that many boys at this time had no option but to follow their fathers down the mine. Most boys were uneducated. It was not until 1918 that compulsory education was introduced in the United Kingdom. In Plaques 4 and 5, Sisters, we learn of the work known as hurrying and thrusting, exhausting for the young girls. The chains between her legs caused pain and damage. The thrusters would have the hair on the forehead worn away from pushing the tubs. It was seeing work such as this by inspectors that led to the Act of 1842, forbidding women and girls and boys under 10 from working down inside the coal mine. We see a pit pony in Plaques 6 and 7. Coal owners had to find other sources of labour to replace the women and the children who had previously done this work. To do the work of dragging tubs and materials around the mines, they turned to ponies. The bond between some colliers and their pit ponies was as strong as their bond with their human counterparts. One of the most important aspects of underground life throughout the ages was the strong camaraderie between the miners. In such a harsh environment, these bonds of friendship were a true lifesaver. Plaque 8 shows a canary in a cage. Canaries were used to detect deadly carbon monoxide gas. If gas was present, the canary would become agitated or drop off its perch, and the miners would retreat to fresh air, taking themselves and the bird out of danger. The miner on the right is passing his water bottle to his pal in Plaque 9. They shared everything: water, food and loyalty.
My name is Len Prince. I worked in coal mines for over 27 years. Coal mining can be traced back in my family history since 1824. This memorial means so much to families associated with coal mining. It highlights the hidden underground struggles and sacrifices coal miners made to feed their loved ones and fuel the economy through peacetime and war. They will always be remembered. Plaques 10, 11, 12 and 13 highlight the main mode of transport underground. The irreplaceable tub For hundreds of years, tubs have been used for transporting coal and supplies underground. Tubs are wheeled open-top trucks which ran on rails. Originally, they were small enough to be moved around the mine by men, women and children. Their design changed little over the centuries, only the size of materials they were made out of changed. They were robust and low-tech, with braking achieved by inserting a length of wood or metal called a locker into the wheel spokes to stop the wheel rotating, as seen in Plaque 12. This was a highly skilled job. Failure to stop the tub could result in miners being injured by a runaway tub. The enclosure below Plaques 11 and 12 contain a flame safety lamp and brass checks used by miners. The checks were used to make sure a miner had returned safely out of the mine after a working shift. The flame safety lamp is an iconic symbol of protection for miners. It illuminated the total blackness through the flame that would not ignite explosive gas. It saved countless thousands of lives. Eventually, tubs were moved around the mine by mechanical rope haulage, and their capacity to move coal increased. They were coupled together, making long trains, and pulled by a large battery or diesel-powered locomotives. Plaque 14 depicts the Bevan Boys. From the start of World War II in 1939 up to 1942, miners enlisted into the armed forces, causing a shortage of workers in the industry. This impeded the war effort as coal production needed to be increased. When soldiers were demobbed, the conscripts had the right to go back to their previous jobs, were awarded service medals, received clothes in exchange for their uniforms, the so-called demob suit. They marched in Memorial Day parades and were feted by the nation. Bevan Boys received none of these accolades. It was not until 2007 that these men were officially recognised with a medal for their service to the country.
My name is Brian Elliott, originally from Barnsley. I'm an author and historian with a special interest in coal mining history. Many of my publications relate to the working conditions and dangers that miners had to face, especially underground. For many years I have been researching the role of miners during the First World War. I was delighted to support the National Mining Memorial and contribute to the commemorative book, A Nation's Tribute. On Plaque 15, we see a miner testing for deadly methane gas with a flame safety lamp. The main cause of explosions underground was the ignition of methane gas, or fire damp, as the miners called it. A skilled miner could use the lamp to detect the percentage of deadly methane in the air by the changes in the nature and the colour of the flame. The next 5 plaques depict a mining disaster caused by a major roof collapse. Injury or death was the main hazard for a miner as he competed against the forces of nature and machinery. First, we see the walking wounded. Plaques 17 and 18 depict a miner who is badly injured in the disaster being carried out by members of the Mines Rescue Brigade. Back in the 1800s, miners would volunteer to go into the mine in an attempt to save the lives of their friends. These men had no special equipment or training. They only had an inbuilt duty to go to the aid of their fellow miners, irrespective of the dangers involved, often resulting in their own injury or death. Eventually, mines rescue brigades were formed. These were highly trained volunteers who would be the first to attend major incidents underground. They were equipped with breathing apparatus, which enabled rescuers to work for longer underground in toxic atmospheres. They also carried advanced medical equipment. The mines rescue brigades had a long and proud tradition, not only of saving lives, but also their swift actions often saved the pit from closure. The miner in Plaque 19A has his head against the fallen rock, hoping to hear signs of life. A roof collapse underground was a common occurrence. Luckily, not all ended in disaster. In the next plaque, we see a miner who is lying unconscious on the other side of a roof collapse. His fate lay in the hands of his fellow miners.
I am Colonel Dickie Hawkins, the Corps Colonel of the Royal Engineers. The Royal Engineers have been known as sappers for their expertise in creating tunnels and trenches, known as CHAPS, since the 17th century. Coal miners made excellent soldiers and excellent sappers. They were much sought after by army commanders because they were fit, disciplined, and were used to working in dangerous conditions. But in particular, they trusted their comrades with their lives. The last three plaques on the side of the memorial tell us of the major contribution coal miners made in the First World War. During World War I, German troops dug tunnels to attack British trenches and fortifications. In response to this type of warfare, the Royal Engineers formed tunnelling companies who were specialist, secret units within the British Army. Thousands of enlisted miners were deployed to dig tunnels that would be used to attack the Germans. It was an incredibly dangerous job digging by hand beneath enemy-held territory in order to lay explosives. All earth dug by them had to be carried out and disposed of in ways that would not alert the enemy. The men had to work as quietly as possible in order to avoid detection. A cat and mouse game, listening out for enemy positions with the constant fear of tunnel collapse, discovering explosives laid by the German army, or being attacked by the enemy. Those who survived the horrors of war returned home and had to pick up the pieces of their lives. Those who were physically able returned to coal mining. As we have moved around the memorial following the seam of coal in the drift mine, we look at the three plaques at the top of the south side. 23A on the left represents a miner in the First World War. Over 500,000 miners volunteered to fight in the Great War. 23B on the right depicts a miner around the time of the Second World War. This particular miner lived through two monumentous periods, World War II and the nationalisation of the coal mining industry. We should never forget, irrespective of their nationality, the role and bravery of coal miners in the two world wars. It should be noted that 47 miners from the British forces received the Victoria Cross for their heroic actions.
My name is Michael Miller, President of CHAPS, and delighted to be a member of this enthusiastic and dedicated group of volunteers. I have the honour, on behalf of the committee, to conclude the story as shown on the bronze plaques surrounding the memorial. The final plaque is of the words of dedication, which includes 45 miners in the First World War were awarded the Victoria Cross. 2 further Victoria Crosses were awarded for exploits in the Second World War. Sir Winston Churchill is quoted as saying, "The miners would be able to stand as equals with the fighter pilots, the merchant seamen and the soldiers for recognition of their efforts during wartime." So concludes this brief but unforgettable story of the coal miners of the United Kingdom. A more detailed version of this story can be seen on Chase Arts for Public Spaces website under National Miners Memorial and in the book A Nation's Tribute. Chaps hope you have found visiting the National Miners Memorial a worthwhile and memorable experience.
If you wish to see the miner's lamp illuminated, face it, and on the right hand side of the memorial, under the first plaque, place a mobile phone torch over the exposed fibre optic cable.